Hey, welcome gang. Dave Paulides, a copyrighted edition for the Canada Missing Project YouTube page. Back at you again from the silo. And thank you for being here. And a specific warm welcome to all of Mr. Ballin's folks that have come over, almost 20,000 in the last 2 weeks. So I appreciate that very much. Now you're going to see something quite different from me than you did from Mr. Ballin. This is more almost like a police briefing. I'm going to give you some inside look as how the process went for me acquiring the information, because that's important, and the obstruction that's been seen. I'm just not going to read you a story. I'm going to explain how the process goes. I'm going to explain the rocks and barriers that I hit along the way. And I'm going to compare it to other things that I know about this research after doing it for 10, 11 years. Now, from the get-go, I'm going to start off with asking you to do something different than you have had in other videos. I'm going to ask that you be a critical thinker. And what I mean by that is don't accept that just because someone says something, it's true. I get emails every day. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this map matching your missing person map? Let's start with that. We've had over 30 maps sent to us, and I would say 10 of those are almost dead ringers to the maps and to our missing person map. So sending maps over, we've seen just about everything you can imagine. The missing person cluster map, we've now done a cluster map for British Columbia and for Montana. People thinking about the Montana book and you haven't gotten it yet, we got just wiped out over Christmas time. Starting probably February 3rd, 4th, or 5th, we will have the Montana books and the Montana cluster maps back in stock. And never foresaw what was happening with that. But yeah, 3 different cluster maps. And they each tell us something different. That's the reason I do a map. When I was a policeman, we did maps on all serial criminals, robbery suspects, rapists, etc., because they told us if you understood where they would hit next, if they did enough of the crime. And from doing these maps, I've learned things that I never knew before about clustering effects, about where they cluster, about water and their relationship. It's all important. Now, about being a critical thinker. There's a lot of people out there that are speaking heads, meaning they've never really done research, and they just talk off the top of their head, trying to convince you to watch their video, get their views, and get paid their money. And the more outlandish the claim, the more people will go and watch the video. Now for me, I'm not going to give a bunch of outlandish claims unless I can back it up with facts. And some people have a difficult time with that. If you're a good researcher and you make exaggerated claims and you say things that you can't back up with those facts, you're going to be blown out of the water quickly. I don't do that. I am very careful with my words, which brings up another point. I get called and I get contacted by missing people's families regularly. In the last month, I've been contacted twice from missing families and asked about the relationship with search and rescue, asked about how they should proceed, etc. And I know that missing families are watching this video right now. And because of that, I am very respectful of them. I don't clown around in these videos. I'm not going to joke and kid. It's not a funny topic. It's very solemn. And once you look in the eyes of these missing families and the pain and the torture and the lack of closure, I can't explain to you how important this is to understand the topic. And maybe there would be more commitment from the highest levels of the Park Service, Forest Service, and our government if more of these people were willing to look in the eye of these victims' families and show some empathy. But they won't. And they don't want to. And they don't want to get close to these people because they would understand the pain and they don't want to feel it. So, I know that the people from Mr. Ballin's YouTube site are new to this topic, so I always go through all the same questions that I get when new people come on board. Somebody watched a few videos. I had 4 people this week say, oh, it's pretty obvious what's happening. These little people, these little kids got picked up by birds and carried away. No, that isn't it. Because when a bird of prey picks up a target, the way they pick it up is with their talons. And they're very strong, and they have to inflict a very deep wound to get a good grab to pull them away. None of the victims have these talon marks. So wipe that off your agenda. It's not a big bird. So I appreciate all of the emails I've had this week, hundreds and hundreds. If you do send me an email, please keep it to a paragraph or two short paragraphs max. And I ask you that is because we don't have the time to go through and read 3 and 4 pages of emails. I'm sorry. If your topic is of interest to us and it's a current thing that we're pursuing, we will get back to you. And I have gotten back to a lot of people this week. So thank you. And I appreciate that because I'm not so self-centered enough to think I'm going to solve this on my own. It's going to take a village like you and me to solve this together. And longtime listeners to our YouTube know that it's those topics that people have brought up, the directions that you've pointed me that have helped. A number of years ago, a friend of mine, Duncan Rhodes, invited me to Australia to speak at his conference. And I did a tour of Australia for a series of books I wrote. And I learned so much from being there. The commonalities and the disappearances, the issues with various things were astounding. And predominantly, almost all of the disappearances in Australia are happening on the east coast of Australia, which is some people odd. To me, it's not odd. And the close proximity to the ocean, as I've stated here in the Pacific coast and the Atlantic Ocean. So, I haven't talked a lot or read many of the emails that you brought in, but I've got a couple today that are pretty interesting. Again, if you don't like to think, if you don't want to apply your mind to this, if you don't want to help us out, then I respect that. You don't even have to listen. But I'm going to give you some intellectual emails that will cause your brain to engage. And this is one of them today. I had a couple of them a couple months ago, and they're on our website, canammissing.com, under current events. You can read a study that was done by a PhD on phases of the moon and disappearances. And his result was, there's no way this was random. So read it. So here's the latest. This is a real good one. It says, Dave, over the last 4 to 5 years, I've noticed a prudent shift in attention to the evidence as a source of the solution to uncover just what or who is happening here. At some point, the consistency of data points beg for an aspect of who, what, and why is it all happening. The first thing is obvious, because of the point of separation. Let me stop there. New people. 99% of the time, these incidents involving missing people happen when they separate from a group or their partner. It's almost as though, and many people have said this, something is watching and waiting for you to step away, and then an incident happens. That's what we call the point of separation. It is an intelligent energy force. That's clear to me. It is powerful, beyond human power, that is. For no one can resist what happens to them. To me, it mattered not where these entities or joystick controllers are from, the Twinkie Zone, Bangladesh, or some demon realm. The better insight is how and why is it possible? Those answers have been the real juggernaut concerning all consciousness focused on it. There has been an evolution of open-mindedness caused by questions and consistency and dogged devotion, coupled with time that have brought you to the place where you can comprehend what's really going on. You have allowed yourself to be open to what is not tangible. That was unavoidable, for you investigated all you have over 10 plus years with both feet on the ground. Now you're finding that they still are, no matter what you accept is, there's no other way than straight ahead with this. I first looked into it, or no, when I first saw it text, I scoffed, just like all things we never give a fair hearing to. And that brings up a really good point. I can't tell you how many people make comments and say, oh, this is just garbage, and this guy's just making this stuff up. I just laugh. I don't even give it two craps anymore, because I know these people are ignorant. They're not really looking into it. As an example, if you look at my Wikipedia page, Wikipedia is someplace I have never told people to go for knowledge because it is so biased. If there's anybody out there that's a Wikipedia editor, please give it a shot of correcting my page, because about 90% of it is wrong and doesn't include 90% of what I do. And they give a huge bulk of the Wikipedia page to some guy who made a video, who claims to be some kind of expert at something, I don't know what, and claims that my research isn't special, the cases aren't unusual, and it can all be explained away. And I have had 4 people in Wikipedia that were editors in the past that tried to correct that page, and somebody up above each time slammed them down. And I'm not talking about small mistakes about me. These are huge. And to give somebody a huge amount of time to discredit me on Wikipedia is highly unusual. It tells me that, as some of you have said, I'm over the target and I'm having a big effect on the way some people think, and they're trying to put me down. So take a look at my Wikipedia page when this video is over and see how biased and full of garbage it is. And some people will say, oh, Dave, why did you do that? It just slams you. But 90% of the story isn't true. And any of you who have read the books know what this guy is saying is complete garbage. So anyhow, give it a look. Back to the story. Here's a quote. There is a principle that is proof against all arguments and a bar to all new information, which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Quote was by Herbert Spencer. I just like the way he says it. Bias. Okay, here we go. We are two-dimensional, a simulation or a holographic project. With this new insight, everything is explained for me. It fits in every nook and cranny, and very simply, it is something that I would butcher in trying to convey just why this is so, or why I believe it is. It fits everything I know about the material and the spiritual realms that my senses tell me I am in. To convince you to simply look into it is my reason for this email. All you have to do is type it in and see what comes out. Anything to do with living in a simulation or being in a simulation by physicists concerning quantum physics. Elon Musk was asked about it. His answer is right on time. I'll let you find out for yourself. The guy is weird smart, or just way over my head to get it. David, it's not that we live in a simulation, but that we are a simulation. I hope you investigate for yourself. I hope that being with the joystick or avatar gets tired. To him, we are a toy. Maybe a toy he's had for a year or two. It's still Christmas morning to them. These missings are not mentioned in any scientific doc I have ever seen. I cannot be the first. I could be wrong, and I would love to be proven wrong about this. With the new understandings of the missing and quantum physics together, each issue makes it clear in understanding the other. Now I wish it were aliens or vortexes or wormholes. To swallow the idea that I'm not even real. I'm an example of what our future will be as we create holographic realities through advancements in technologies that we all see coming now. I've read you these type of emails before. I want you to think. I want you to contemplate. I want a scientific basis in reality. There's some TV shows that talk about simulations, that talk about these type of ideas and their possibility. And they're challenging. And I bring up this regularly. Coincidence. I cannot tell you the number of times in 10 years that something I was thinking about the day before dropped in my lap the next day out of seemingly nowhere. And I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I am persistent. And I try to be thorough. And I don't understand how some of these things happen. I don't understand how out of nowhere I get these things that are the last piece of a certain puzzle. It just happens. Now, on the intellectual side, I have stated many times that people have contacted me from the outside that are geniuses. I mean, the PhD that wrote the article that I told you about on our website, super smart person. And I get these emails regularly. And if the people tell me not to talk, I don't talk. If the people say, hey, keep this to yourself, I keep it to myself. And I can tell you that people with top secret clearances have contacted me. I swear to you. And I've met with them. And they are intrigued by many parts of our research. The distances that small people, little kids travel, the elevations that they achieve, the huge amounts of GHB that are found in the bodies of some of the people that are deceased. And the size of the GHB amount in the body is so much that it's inconceivable that the people might have drank it or ingested it themselves. As I've told you before, the GHB is produced in minute quantities in the body. Is there some way that something has figured out how to activate that in our body and cause massive amounts to enter? Now again, GHB is one of those things that if I give you vast amounts of it and I put you in water, you're going to be alive. But you know what? You're going to die by drowning. And in Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence, I've talked about this a lot. Now, what about the people that have died from hypothermia in the woods that seemingly could have just walked out? Well, coroners never, ever look for GHB in the system. It's not one of those 24 ingredients that are routinely screened for on a drug and toxicological screening. I wish it would be, because I think the revelation would be huge. Now that's something that these high intellectuals have keyed on, GHB. And they recognize the people dying of hypothermia, the people that are drowning, probably have these high levels in their body. I'm not saying they do, except in the cases I've proven it in Sobering Coincidence. And they've proven it through second autopsies. So, that's the intellectual side of things. I want to jump into a couple of cases. And the first thing I want to talk about is Yosemite National Park. And again, for the people that are new, Yosemite is the largest cluster of missing people fitting our profile points in the world. That's not a light claim. Now, it's Yosemite National Park and the periphery of the park, because right on that periphery, there's tons of people. And I don't believe that you can put a hard line on these clusters because there's not a specific radius. I've usually included about an 80-mile radius from the center point for most cluster zones. Now, you can look online and validate this. But you know what Yosemite means by definition to the Miwok Indians? That's M-I-W-O-K. It means those who kill. I can't make that up. And when I first read that years ago, I thought, wow. Now, the reference in that by the Native Americans was that there was a tough tribe in there, and allegedly it was about tribal warfare. Now, I've been trying to get a hold of a native elder in that area to confirm this. I can't. It's just a definition, and there was many other validations about how that was inferred online, so I'm not putting any credence one way or the other. Now, Yosemite has a lot of things that no other park in the world has, namely the largest amount of granite probably in the world. And we've done a deep dive on granite, and we understand that it has unusual qualities. And you can look it up. I've talked about it before on other YouTubes. But, and Yosemite isn't the only place in the world with granite that I've written about that has unusual disappearances. There's a place in Texas that has a huge granite mound that I've talked about in a YouTube, where somebody disappeared at the top and felt like it was a priest, was swallowed in and was quote unquote spit out days later. So the other thing Yosemite has is the largest waterfall, and the tallest waterfall in the world, 2,425 feet. And in comparison, Empire State Building, that's only 1,250 feet. So you'd have to climb that thing twice to get the effort that you'd get if you climbed to the top of Yosemite Falls. It's about a 3.5-mile hike. And the trail was built in 1873 to 1877. And it is gorgeous. And that's where we're going to start today. Now, a little secret that the Park Service does not like to talk about at all is that the National Park Service has a high number of suicides compared to the rest of the territory in the U.S. And this could be because it's such a beautiful place that maybe to do yourself in, that's where people go, but they don't talk about it very much. And if you read an article, in the back of your mind, keep that in your thoughts. Because if they're very protective of the information and they don't make a lot of statements, they might be trying to just protect the rights of the family. Now, the cases that I write about, this has been vetted out, unless I specifically mention it as a possibility and it's in a cluster zone. But yeah, suicides in national parks are huge. The parks don't like to list suicides in their statistical data. So, what else about Yosemite? There's a lot of water. Look at Hetch Hetchy Dam inside of Yosemite National Park. Hetch Hetchy Dam. Now, that is the primary water source for the city and county of San Francisco, and it is surrounded by granite. If you're in Yosemite Valley, right where Yosemite Falls Trail starts, huge boulders everywhere, granite boulders. Now, people in national parks don't necessarily just disappear in the middle of nowhere on a long backpacking trip. That's not true. I've written about several cases in the floor of Yosemite, right around the village, where people really did vanish and were never found and made no sense. Now, the Yosemite Falls Trail is very popular. And some people have said, well, you know, maybe a mountain lion got him or a bear got him. Well, there's mountain lions in Yosemite. There's black bears in Yosemite, but there are no grizzly bears in Yosemite. There's red fox, there's fishers, a lot of deer, bighorn sheep. Not a lot of predators that are going to attack people. So the idea that somebody gets taken down by a large predator on one of these trails with a lot of people around, I don't believe it. If it happened, the person would be screaming and yelling and everyone would hear it, but that never happens. Animal predation is vetted out in every case I've ever written. And a lot of people say, oh, it's got to be a bear, it's got to be this. No. Search and rescue people are trained to look for these type of things and they don't find it. If someone's attacked and killed by a predator, there's going to be a big scene, a big dust up in the ground, torn clothing, blood, flesh. This isn't found. So, the first case I'm going to talk to you about is the most recent case. January 14th of this year, a Chinese national named Alice Xie, and it's spelled Xie, 41 years old, took a Yosemite bus from Mariposa to the park. She was supposedly going to be gone for just one day. That day in Yosemite was unseasonably warm and clear. And she decided that she wanted to hike the Yosemite Trail, and she was carrying a green backpack. Let's look at this trail to understand the complexity. Yosemite Trail starts down in Yosemite Village, and it works its way up, and it kind of levels off here when you have a view of Yosemite Falls. This is Columbia Rock. And then it goes at almost a 45-degree angle all the way up to Yosemite Falls. It's a huge, huge effort to get there. If you're not in good shape, you shouldn't be doing it. And that's something I tell everybody. Whether you are a hunter, fisherman, weekend outdoorsman, don't go into the wilderness thinking it's going to be a walk in the park on level ground. Walking in the wilderness is a lot of up and down, uneven ground. It can be very stressful on your body, and especially if you don't have the right shoes. Don't go out and buy hiking boots one day and take a 6-mile hike in them the next day. Wear them around town for a few days. Make sure they're comfortable and break them in. But anyhow, this trail is tough. And you're going to see a lot of people on this trail. You're going to see a ton of people on the trail if you do it during the summer. This time of year, not so many. But the day Alice disappeared, there were at least 20 people from top to bottom that were seen by witnesses during the hours that she was there. Now, she was last seen at about 3 p.m. in the afternoon by a woman who made eye contact with Alice and said that she said hi and she smiled and she seemed to be in good mental shape. And the thought was that Alice went on, crossed the Yosemite River, and continued to Yosemite Point, possibly. Now, she disappeared on the 14th of January. This is a topographic map of Yosemite Village and the trail to the top of Yosemite Point. Now, what is Yosemite Village like? It's like a small city. If you've never gone, you're going to be shocked. The number of people you're going to see, the stores that are open. They've got just about everything you can imagine. They even have a jail in Yosemite. This is true. They do have a jail. And they have a United States magistrate and a courtroom in Yosemite. True. So don't mess around there. They take law enforcement seriously. And yeah. But this trail is tough. And you can see, if you can, these lines are very close together, meaning it's like a cliff. It is a cliff. And from 2010 to 2020, Yosemite had 126 deaths in the park. And in that 10 years, 53 were waterfall related, and 6 specific deaths on Yosemite Falls. Now, Alice disappears. She's carrying this green backpack. She's found the next day when she's reported missing at the base of Upper Yosemite Falls, that level plateau, meaning she had to fall from up above. Hundreds of feet drop. And I can tell you, because I've seen it, when people fall great distance, they break almost every bone in the body. And it's a very sad thing to see. But she was found the next day. Now, what's really odd, and I mean super odd, is Yosemite decides to not tell anybody, including the public, that she was found on the 15th, and they don't tell anybody for a week. They still have told nobody where they found her backpack. Why? Can't tell you. I don't think it's a good practice not to be transparent with the press or the public. But one thing you can for sure say about the National Park Service, they are not transparent. So, I want to say one thing about mental illness. I had some really close friends of mine that had mental illness issues. I love these people. And 2 years ago, I just felt like I had to learn more. And the National Alliance of Mental Illness, National Alliance on Mental Illness, it's called NAMI, N-A-M-I, puts on free classes in most major U.S. cities. Look them up. The class was phenomenal. 12 weeks. I've been in many classes on mental illness through law enforcement, and this class they put on was 10 times better than anything I've ever gone to before. How to deal with people with mental illness, insight, etc. I cannot say enough positive things about it. And when we're in this COVID crisis right now, I can tell you that mental illness is peaking around the corner at many venues in our world. And it's sad what's happened to so many young people because they can't be in school. The number of suicides in some of these cities is phenomenal. It's very sad. But that class I took gave me insight I never would have had any other way. And I thank NAMI for doing a phenomenal job. And I encourage anyone who needs more information about it to contact them. NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, great people. They don't even charge you for the class. Enough on that. The next case happened June 17th, 2011. Case involves George Penca, P-E-N-C-A, June 17th, 2011. He was on the Upper Yosemite Falls Trail. Now, George was from Hawthorne, California, and he was a regular at his church, described as extremely committed to his religious upbringing. And he went with 80 people from his church to Yosemite. And when they got there, 20 of them decided to hike to Upper Yosemite Falls. Now, this is what George was wearing when he was last seen. Gray sweats, black t-shirt. And he had a water bottle. And when they were at the top of Yosemite Falls, everybody said he was fine, was in a good mood. And they all decided to break up and walk down together. Walk down separately at their own pace. Now, this is what we describe as that point of separation. Now, in Alice's case, there was water, Yosemite Falls. It's in a cluster zone, boulders, almost a 100-year history of missing people in Yosemite, and this point of separation, exactly like George. And then a lot of people have asked me, well, Dave, can you tell us about religion if the people were religious that disappeared? I'm telling you now, George was that man. So the group disbanded. George never arrived back at the bottom, and he was reported missing at 9 p.m. that night on June 17th. Huge search. Huge. 12 helicopters were contracted by the Park Service to fly every possible direction from that Upper Yosemite Falls area. Nobody truly thought that George was going to get far because he was pretty tired. He wasn't in really good shape, and it was a phenomenal effort for him to get to the top. Now, they dispatched 105 different search and rescue personnel for 7 days. And they also dispatched 6 canines on this search. This is a critical point. A canine can smell a dead body miles away. Cadaver dog. A canine can pick up a scent days after a person was at a specific location. These canines didn't pick up anything from the last point that George was at. Folks, that is not normal. And that is why I cover it in my book. So in this one, point of separation, cluster zone, water, lack of scent, And there's been 9.5 years since George Penca disappeared, and they haven't found anything. This is not normal. Now, if we go back to the map that we talked about earlier with this map here, where we talk about the valley of Yosemite, folks, I've had people disappear from right on the valley floor when they told relatives that they were just going to take a 2-mile walk up and down the valley and they're gone. Nothing's ever found. So don't think you have to be way up in the middle of nowhere. National parks are not as safe as people think. Now granted, millions and millions of people are going to go to the parks every year, tens of millions. And very few are going to fit the specific criteria. So what I tell families is, would I go to a national park? Oh, heck yes. I was in a park for the last time I filmed the video for you guys. Would I go alone? Oh, yes. I always go. Sometimes I have to go alone because there's nobody around. But I carry my personal locator beacon always. And I always tell people where I'm going, and I always tell friends when I'm going to be out. Always. Check the weather before you go in. Even if I'm just going to go right next to let's say, a road and film without even hiking into the backcountry, I always tell people. And those are the basic rules when you go into the wilderness. Check the weather before you go, because weather is a big issue in a lot of these disappearances. Weather inhibits the searchers, covers up tracks, or it'll cause search and rescue to stop flying air support, etc. For some reason, weather plays in to many of the cases, not all. In George and Alice's cases, weather really didn't play into it. The day George disappeared, it was a really nice day. It wasn't too warm or too hot. The day Alice disappeared, it was an unseasonably warm day, so weather didn't, but everything else played in. So you got to use some common sense going into the wilderness and always practice hiker safety. Some people have asked me to recommend a personal locator beacon. I can tell you that all of them work. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on the market. I don't get in the practice of recommending specific brands for liability reason, but I will tell you that if they're on the market, they've been proven and they work. And some people have responded back and say, oh, well, people still disappear. Of course. And I've written about a few people who have disappeared and were only found because of their personal locator beacon, but they were dead. I've also written about people with personal locator beacons that activated it and still weren't found. And I can't tell you why, because that locator beacon will find you within 10 feet. So either they moved on their own or they were moved because the location where it transponded from wasn't the location that they were at. Here's a fact I've told many of my followers before, but always remember this because I've never been proven wrong. I hope I am someday, but not yet. I've never found anyone who went missing carrying a firearm and a personal locator beacon together. Did you catch that? If you have a gun with you and you have a personal locator beacon, I don't have a case where someone disappeared with those. I have a lot of people that have disappeared with just firearms. And if you look at missing 411 hunters, I have a whole book full of them. So carrying a firearm isn't a guarantee. Carrying both together, don't know. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, maybe it's the mentality of the gun. I don't know what it is. Is it the survival instincts by the people who possess those items? Is it the foresight that they had to be ultimately prepared for what's in the wilderness? I don't know. But I've learned over the years to never jump to a conclusion because mostly when I do in my own mind, I'm wrong. So, there's 2 cases from Yosemite. Alice's case, I really don't know if it fits into the 411 profile right now because Yosemite hasn't listed enough facts to determine. And I don't know exactly what the mental frame of her mind was when she went up there or how she fell. I do know that George Penca's case fits, along with about 60 others in Yosemite. And that list of missing people from Yosemite, there's a lot of other cases where people fell that it's very suspicious that I've talked about in other interviews. Specifically, other interviews right here on this channel where I talked about a woman being launched off the side of a cliff. That's right. So look for them, follow them. I have about 75 or 80 YouTubes now on this channel. Follow me. Twitter is David Paulides at Can-Am Missing. David Paulides at Can-Am Missing. Follow me on Twitter. And website for reading more about missing people, canammissing.com, like Canadian American missing.com. Folks, I'm eternally grateful that anyone here is paying attention. A lot of people like to dismiss this, but if you have a family member that disappears, you're going to understand why I am here. I'm one of the few people that are banging the drums on these cases because the government wants them all to just disappear and go away. So thank you very much for your friendship. We are a family here, remember that. And hopefully soon I'm going to be back out there in the wilderness filming on a regular basis and get out of the silo. You have a great week.